Hello, everyone. How do I follow up the poo-poo art show? This is hard. All right, before I get started, I wanted to take a moment to give a shout out to the Dash crew. I've known Mac and Corey since the early days of Dash, and not to only watch them grow the studio, but to see how much they're giving back to the community, how much energy, blood, sweat, and tears they're putting in, from the Dash dailies to the Clubhouse chats to playlists to putting a fucking festival on. It's pretty epic to see them put so much back in. So I hope you'll join me in giving them a round of applause. Awesome. Now even if my talk bombs, I can say there was a round of applause. Thank you. So my name is TJ Kearney, and I am the director of content for a company called Work & Co. We build some of the world's best digital products. And what I particularly love about my role here is I get to build my own team. I have an internal motion team that I love. But I also get to partner with outside studios. So I get to still work with my motion buds, and I get to have my own team. We support our offices. We play an integral design role supporting our offices all over the world. See, we have pretty offices. They're all over the world, like I said. Well, I said all this, right? So I'm going to skip ahead. In addition to all this, I spent the last 10 years as a consultant for motion studios, as Mac had mentioned. I used to have my own motion studio called Oddfellows. I was the EP for a few agencies. I even worked in features. I'm not actually that cocky. This was just a really funny gif that I wanted to do. I'm not a big deal. But I've been doing this for a long time. I'm coming up on 20 years. I was talking to Luke on Friday, and he was 25. And I doubt he's the youngest person here, but that means I've been producing for as long as some of you have been alive, which is sad. So in industry terms, I'm an old-timer. And while there was a lot of different topics I wanted to talk on today, what I kept coming back to was longevity in this industry. How does one work in this industry for 20, 30, 40 years when we constantly see 20-year-olds to 30-year-olds burning out? How many of you can relate to this meme? Raise your hand. I'm glad it's all of you, or this would have been an awkward talk. So then, all right, that's a bit extreme. We don't really hate ourselves. But everybody in this room has made the choice to work in an industry where we know we're going to put in nights and weekends and sacrifice our personal time. In fact, I was at SCAD's Commotion event. For those of you that don't know what that is, the students put on their own showcase. It's pretty killer. But I was there a number of years ago, and one of my favorite studios was on stage, and they were telling students if they wanted to have any chance of being successful for the next 5 years of their career, they needed to be willing to be the first ones in, the last ones out, work every night and weekend, and sacrifice their personal relationships. And I know what they were doing. It was an honest attempt to warn everyone of what they're getting themselves into. But the fact that we were telling students, young kids, that this is what the only path to success has just really stuck with me ever since then. I know. I sound like a crusty old producer, I know. But this long-winded setup gets to the whole point of my talk. I want to talk about the word no. For the first half of my career, this was a word that I just believed I wasn't allowed to say. I said yes to every single request. And as a result, I worked endless nights and weekends. I did burn personal friendships. I put a strain on my marriage. I burned out animators, illustrators, you name it. And see, it's my opinion that we've created a culture of fear, that if you say no, you're not going to get booked again. If you say no to a client, they're not going to come back to you. But the truth is, once you learn how to say no and when to say no, the word has so much power. Not just for you as the individual who gets your life back, but for the success of the projects that you're on, for the studio you're working for, and ultimately for the client that hired you. And it's when I learned to put myself and my team above the project needs that I found what I would consider success and happiness in what I do. So let's talk about steps to create healthy boundaries and how to know and when to say no. Step one is to prioritize ourselves. See, this is what the traditional priority hierarchy looks like. Client is king. Then you've got the studio's image and profit margin. Then you might have like an asshole of a director to deal with. And then hanging on at the bottom is the people doing the actual day-to-day work. And this is what I think it should look like. People doing the work are at the top. The director should be on the same level, but it wasn't symmetrical if I did that, so. Secondarily, the studio's profits and image, and finally the client. I did put the client last, and that probably looks like I'm going to lose my job, but bear with me. Making the best product is not about who says yes. In fact, saying yes to everything the client wants leads to vanilla work. It leads to work that looks exactly like the brief they brought you in the first place, and you're not adding expertise to the project. Making the best product is actually about having the best team. And to have the best team, you have to attract the best talent. If you want to attract the best talent, you have to know how to take care of your people so that they want to come work for you. Many years ago, I worked for a big agency called Goodby Silverstein & Partners. And the first project I did, I came in way under budget. And I went to my boss and let him know, hey, we got a lot of extra money. And he told me to give the money to the composer. Not for any extra work, not for an extra deliverables, just give it away. Now, as a young producer who had always been taught to maximize my profits, this broke my brain. Like, why would I just give money away that I just fought so hard to come in under budget? And I'm sure many of you have been on projects like that, where corners are cut so that profits are high, but the product suffers a little bit. So I asked him, why would I give this money away? And his answer was simple. I want them to want to work with us. His point was that if you take care of people, they want to take care of you. And that completely flipped how I produced from that point on. And it turned me into this guy. I learned that if I paid people early, if I overpaid them when I could, I never negotiated their rate down, if I fought for them to have normal working hours, then suddenly artists that I'd always wanted to work with not only wanted to work with me, but they would prioritize my bookings. So again, step one is about prioritizing yourself and your team. Step two is all about building off that prioritization and taking the driver's seat to set healthy boundaries that protect you right out of the gate. So what's the trick to setting those boundaries? It's not a very exciting answer. Be honest. This is the foundation for everything else. The biggest mistake many of us take, especially early in our career, is taking the fake it until you make it approach. Saying yes to projects that we don't know how to pull off, agreeing to timelines that we know we can't meet, or worst of all, agreeing to budgets that don't meet the brief. So why do we continue to do this to ourselves, project after project, year after year? Well, that leads us to step three. Wait, that's not right. That's right. Fuck hustle. I hate this word. I hate the mentality. I hate everything about it. I'm glad you agree, or again, this would be weird talk. Look at this sad kitty hustling his ass off. See, hustle culture preaches that the only path to success and respect is by working longer hours than anyone, sleeping less than anyone, having more side hustles than anyone, and our feeds are flooded with this bullshit we're sold to us every single day. The reality of hustle on a physiological level is that it puts our bodies in a flight or flight mode. We have prolonged cortisol stress hormone in our system, making burnout inevitable. And the detrimental effects are anxiety, depression, heart disease, memory impairments, and more, and I have experienced many of those things, both in myself and people I've worked with. More specifically to the motion industry, and this talk in particular, the only thing hustling gets you is more hustling. Individuals fall victim to their own hustling over and over again. They cut their rate on their first project with the hopes that it's going to lead to more work in the future. But what it really does is cement you as the cheaper option. They take on more projects than they can handle simultaneously, and that hustling results in a bunch of work that's delivered subpar because your attention is split. And I can keep giving examples, but I think you get the point. But big studios hustle, And some of them do, and this is true. But the longer you're in this industry, the more you start taking a peek under the hood and getting to know people, what you're going to find is the big studios that do hustle, they have a pretty low staff morale and a high turnover rate. Now, that system is actually built into the business model. Get out of the way. See, they hire young, cheap talent, often lots of interns and recent grads who are young and excited and want to put in the hours. They just learned at SCAD Commotion that they have to put in all the hours. But it doesn't really matter because they know they're going to get a fresh batch of young people year after year. So if that crew burns out in 2 years, it's not a big deal for the studio. I'm not saying all studios do this. I'm not calling anybody out. I have been at studios that do this. So it's a very real thing. And they know they have other tricks. They don't always call it hustle. Sometimes it's we're a family. Sometimes it's coded so that you feel guilty and you don't want to leave anybody hanging. But the reality is they're just getting you at a cheap dollar. This pretty perfectly sums up what it means to hustle if you're an employee somewhere. I'll read it in case you can't see it. My boss arrived at work in a brand new Lamborghini. I said, wow, that's an amazing car. And he replied, if you work hard, put in all the hours, and strive for excellence, I'll get another one next year. I lived this. I actually had a boss do this. So all that hustling you did, all that did was make your bosses richer. Because at the end of the day, you might get a bonus, you might get a slight raise, but all that profit is actually split across the partnership. So if you're going to hustle, do it for yourself, but definitely don't do it as an employee. So again, don't forget, fuck hustle. So let's actually talk about setting boundaries and saying no. As I said earlier, the trick is to first be honest with yourself and with the client. Now let's say a brief comes in that you're excited about. The reference is right up your alley. The budget's right. You really like the client. You're available. And you bid it out, and it's going to take you 6 weeks to do it right. But the client comes back and says you have 3 weeks to get it done. What most of the industry does, and the biggest mistake, in my opinion, that a lot of us make, is we just say yes to 3 weeks. We can work nights and weekends for a few weeks. It's not that big a deal, right? I'll catch up on sleep afterwards. But as many of you have lived, what usually happens is that 3 weeks extends because it was never possible in 3 weeks in the first place. Clients are late in giving you approval. Clients are late in giving you notes. And suddenly that 3 weeks of I don't have to sleep for 3 weeks becomes not sleeping for 6 weeks like you always knew it was going to be in the first place. And now you just set yourself up for a system where you're just constantly burning out yourself, working around the clock, burning out your team. So instead, this is how I would respond when that opportunity came in. Oops. Maybe? Okay. Nope. So, yes, my talk is slightly mislabeled because I wrap all my no's in yeses. But I would say something to the effect of, yeah, of course we'd love to do this project with you. Based on years of experience of making these types of videos, what you've written in your brief would take us 6 weeks. Here are some suggestions on how you can scale back to meet your timeline. Or if you want us to make it exactly as you did, here's realistically what it's going to take to get it done. I'm a little out of order, so bear with me. But yes, I am saying yes through a no. But what I'm willing to do is walk away from that project. That's the biggest thing. If they can't meet what I need to be successful on this project, then it's okay to walk away. Step 5 builds on everything we just talked about. Remember, they came to you because you are the expert. The most common mistake freelancer studios take on the burden of figuring out how to cut those corners to meet the client's expectation, even when they're unrealistic. The reality is that's no one in this room's responsibility. It's the client's responsibility to set their own internal expectations accordingly with the means they have for the ask that they're bringing to the table. But within this industry, we tend to feel like guilty or like we need to find a way to make it work for these clients. But again, it's their budget, it's their job on the line, it's their job to come to you and come up with a system that works for everybody. Now, imagine for a second you were going to remodel your bathroom. You got this beautiful Pinterest board, you've got all these beautiful bathrooms, you picked your tiles, you know what you want. You head over to Yelp and find the best plumber you can find. And Mac, the plumber, puts a bid together for you. He comes back and he says, that looks beautiful, I want to make that for you. To do that, it'll take $50,000 in 8 weeks. Now imagine if you told the plumber, well, I'm only going to give you $20K in 4 weeks. It makes Mac sad. No one in their right mind would expect Mac to do that job. But for some reason in our industry, this happens every day. This conversation happens every single day. And a lot of our industry just caves, thinking they'll just figure it out. Like I said, we can suck it up for a few weeks. We'll figure it out. Or because maybe it'll lead to a bigger opportunity. But really, I think they cave out of fear. Because the client will just go with someone else. Now, this isn't very enlightening, but this is true. Oh, there we go. She's animated now. See, when I had my own studio, this was a really hard transition for us. There was a time where we were up and coming, we had lower rates, but at a certain point, we needed to elevate. We wanted to make higher caliber work, which meant we needed more money. And in the process, we shed a lot of clients. This was obviously a very scary time as a studio owner. You don't want to be losing money. But the result was that we actually had higher opportunities come to us. By holding out for the opportunities that let us set us up for success, we attracted other opportunities that allowed us to work in that same manner. So by saying no to opportunities that would overstress your staff, you're keeping yourself available and focused on projects that allow you to do things right. These healthier timelines mean that the team has time to experiment and push beyond the base level of their brief. They mean that people can work 8-hour days. My team really does work 8-hour days or less. They can have a life, but most importantly, they can actually come in fresh with new ideas every single day. And most importantly, is that they can avoid burnout and they can keep doing this career for years to come. See, if you have a healthy timeline, you don't have those high cortisol levels, so you can keep doing this, and you can stay inspired, and you can keep doing it. It's a young industry. I mean, we really haven't seen someone within this realm of motion retire. So I want to see that happen. I want to see what really happens is we build studios and then sell out, or we burn out and we transition into another field. But if we can create a system where we're actually working healthy hours, I think we'll see a lot more people last for their whole career. Starting to take this approach and having this mentality is going to act like a magnet. You can live a healthy life like, look at this. That's a producer just living his life happy as can be. Still taking calls, but he's good. An example of this is actually possible. I'm coming up on 10 years without working nights and weekends or asking my team to. I still work on big clients. I still get big budgets. It just takes communication to be able to build these boundaries. And the older I get and the more senior people I have around me, I realize it's the people that have learned when and how to say no that are becoming the most successful and the healthiest. So to recap, prioritize yourself over your team. Be honest with yourself and with your clients about what it'll take to achieve their goals. Ignore the external pressure to hustle. Be comfortable saying no and walking away from projects that don't set you up for success. And be confident in level-setting project realities and suggestion really realistic alternatives. That's me. Thanks.